Okay, so let's continue. So, okay, let me just maybe give you a quick intro what we're going to do, and then you can actually just maybe pair up with Joseph, because then I don't need to jump in. So basically, what we're doing is called the cognitive interview. I will give you a sheet here. There you go. Oops. No worries. I will just briefly explain this to you, and then we all start off. Right, give me just 2 minutes. So basically, cognitive interviews is about finding out how people think about a website or an app we have developed. And I know you develop apps and stuff, so and you probably never know how people actually like the app, or you just think it's cool. That's normally what I think too. For our practice now, the idea is that you're in pairs, so you're with Joseph. They're the pairs, and one partner will be a middle-aged adult. I think you are the middle-aged adult, right? And you will be the teenage smoker. Okay, is that fine with you? You're not a teenager, but you're smoking, right? No, I'm kidding. You might. And the other partner is the person who actually developed that web page. So which would mean that you developed the HPB Healthy Living website, and Joseph developed the teensmokefree.gov website, okay? And the idea is that the developer or the researcher interviews now the middle-aged adult and the teenager about the website that he has developed, okay? So, and for this to work, there is this practice sheet, this one, that kind of guides you through how to do it. And I would say for you, maybe Joseph, you start off interviewing him so he can kind of get the feel of how this works. And then we'll switch around. Does that make sense? Maybe you can explain to him for 2 minutes or so. Sure. I guess you've... Yeah, maybe you can. I think. Okay, cool. So I guess we can start off now. So if you wish, you can just kind of disperse a little bit in the room, because you actually have to interview that person with all nuts and bolts, like with the whole intro. Okay, we're going to look at this website. It's for this and this. This is the instructions. This is what I ask you to do, and all these kind of things. So the idea is to start off with the Healthy Living website, and for you it will be the Smoke-Free website, and to interview the middle-aged adult for about 10-15 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that. Like I kind of time 15 minutes. And then we will switch around. So then you will interview the teenager. So the interview and interview change, basically. So that's what we're trying to do. And I hope you can kind of follow the procedures. I will listen into a lot of things. And what would be great if you could, on this practice sheet, there's a table where you can just write down the issues you discover, maybe 3 or 5 issues. Like, where was it, what was the issue, and propose a change to the issue that was discovered. So, for example, there's a sentence that the participant thinks sounds weird. That's the issue, and then maybe propose a change. You can ask the participant about it, or you can even propose a change yourself. And then after this, so this is said like Healthy Living website first, teenage smoker, I will give signal second, and then we all bring it together, see what you all found about changes and issues, and then we summarize the whole thing, talk a little bit about analysis, and that's that. Cool? Great. Awesome. So let's start. I think you have to disperse a little bit, I guess. So I just look at the watch, like 15 minutes from now, I will let you know when you can shift around. So you were interviewing first, right? Oh, he's interviewing it first. Okay. Okay, you're the participant, so basically you don't need to have anything. So he will just note down things. He will probably give you this thing to look at it because on your phone it's quite small. Cool, great.
Good morning. Today I'll be bringing you through the healthy living study. Because in this study, we want to find out what we were thinking about the healthy living website. So we can take a break at any time you want. Just let me know, and then please go through the information sheet. And do you have any questions? Let's see. So now we'll be using the technique of think aloud. Means I'll show you the website name. And then you'll be sharing your thoughts out loud with me. So because I know I know your thinking process, then I can understand how to better develop the website and what changes to make, and so on. So we'll first do an example of think aloud, and see. So the scenario is: please walk me through your house from the entrance to all rooms and count the windows in every room. So let's say I walk into my own house, and let's say I'm in the hallway. And after a few steps, I enter the kitchen on the right. There's one window in the kitchen and above the sink. So after the kitchen is my room, and then in my room there are more windows. So there's a total of 3 rooms, and so on. So do you want to do this for me one time? I'll show you the website, and all you have to do is to look at the website and just say out loud. And if not there's no right answer, no wrong answer. If you say any thoughts which come to mind, even if you don't think that they are important, it's quickly to say negative thoughts, because we need those kind of negative thoughts to make a better website. Let's see, I'll remind you to share your thoughts about the website, because it's something that's very easy to forget. And one thing is, I won't be able to help you use the website, or basically help you to navigate yourself. It's a very commercial one.
Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. Sure.
And then we're ready. We can see how to apply it.
Sure. Why not? This is just because most people don't have that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. One advice to the interviewer: try to avoid leading questions. You like to ask, "Do you think that's useful? Do you think that's good?" So you give him you give him very limited options. He says yes or no. So you really want to know, so how do you think about this feature? How do you think about this? What's your impression about this? So that you get a bit more out than more open-ended, right? That's kind of important.
Instead of forcing it by you.
Exactly. Trying to just what do you think about this?
What do you think about this information?
Exactly. What do you think this leads to? What does that mean to you? These kind of open things. So he has to process actually a lot more rather than yes, no, yes, no. Cool. No worries. You also prompt her a little bit, share what you think, especially when she says things like, "Oh, that's nice." Then you ask, "Oh, what do you mean it's nice? Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you in the work? What is exactly nice here?" Mm-hmm. And especially when she doesn't say much, you go, "What are you thinking?" Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing. Okay, so there should be different sections.
Yeah, because this is easy for me to understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's very key right now. So why not come back to this? This is like she didn't actually kind of know what she was saying.
I wanted to get back to this page. I think this one the reason why
yes.
Because that was the
yes.
first thing that came out.
Yes, okay.
So I was kind of forced to click that.
Okay, yeah, I was very curious.
Just wanted to know more about colorectal cancer and what sort of information has been given here.
Okay, and then she just go back, but she wasn't finding her way back.
Page,
so that's probably a good way. That's probably a good point to maybe note down in the table. Okay, good. So that's a good point. You could write it down. You got lost in the page. Maybe you just put this into your table. Yeah. So she got lost, and then you could think about. You would need to write down kind of where was she lost, what was the issue here and what could be potentially changed to make it easier. So that's how we would come. So we can just change in about 4 minutes. So we change the roles in 4 minutes. Cool.
So that's product speaker. What I want to show you is some rough prototypes of an app we built and send people messages trying to get them to work and stuff. So all of those are starting to see which ones will have so what I would actually this is lower and I found parameters. So I'd say no, not so let me just stop the practice. So what are your first impressions of this? Yeah, that's a really good point. Right, that's that. And so, one thing that we want to do is what we want to do is features and trade, and then you want to follow. Because you kind of raise the point that which brings into your mind. So, this makes sense. So here's another page. So this page says how you make money. So that's another message.
So you could switch around now. In the next couple of minutes, you can just switch around now if you're done. Yes. You just email them. What do you do? So you can shift around to the smoking side. Yeah, cool.
So we need to ensure that we actually so there is no right or wrong.
Sorry? Yeah. Yeah. So keep in mind, you are kind of, you're kind of a teenager, so you can actually behave a little bit like a teenager, sort of, because it's intended for a teenager. You're the target audience, so you can kind of imagine, how would you react to these things? So it makes just a bit more real.
I think the science page is very interesting. They have like a guy and a girl. It's a bit strange. The girl looks happy, but the guy doesn't look so happy. So it's not so appealing. Yeah.
But the country is not.
Yeah. And let's smoke today. I think I like the amount. There are several things like you have to read the book of the background photography. I think it's really hard to read because they are all in capital letters. Maybe you can make them like lowercase, or sentences. Yeah, first letter should be in cap. And let's see. So can I should I scroll down or should I maybe I'll scroll down and you can see there are like five tips. 3 US Instagram. Is this a tool or is it a tip? And I think Instagram is normally those kind of pictures. So I'm not sure how an Instagram account can be a tool or a tip. Yeah.
Sorry?
Should I answer?
No. Just there's an issue. You could observe. You could ask. So, what does it mean to you? Like, you could kind of follow up to kind of figure out what is really the issue here. You say. Normally, you don't answer. You say we can talk about later if it's something that is more big picture, or if it's something related to a website. You can just say, okay, what do you think it means? What do you think it is? Tell me. How would you address it, or whatever it is? Don't point him too much. And you remember you were a teenager, right? So you can kind of act a little, not crazily, but a teenage smoker. Oh, very angry, I need to smoke now.
Yeah, I think this is the sentence which I was talking about.
Why did you click on this now? Let me just kind of intervene a little bit. And just, why did you click this just now?
So I'm using a mindset of some sorts of behavior.
Okay.
So I'm not smoking. It's not so dangerous.
Okay.
Why should I bother to
See
quit?
which
Okay.
parts link on.
So,
Okay.
and it does provide some information, safer,
Okay.
easier for now. So,
Okay.
just when I see if I can find some information on E6, whether it's
Okay.
safer or not, why I should quit.
Okay.
So, I guess it's comprehensive in that sense.
Okay.
It says smoking, but actually it means all the other
Okay.
products
Mhm.
as well, which is what,
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's a theme because that's the problem in the US now. June.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams are picking up E6.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Just be that team. I'm just helping you a little bit here because I feel it's a little bit too little sort of. It's not interaction, but you need to prompt him a little bit more. So why did you click on this? Or what are you looking for? Do you know where you are going, and can you find what you need, and these kind of things. So prompt him a little bit more because he's a bit quiet. Let him talk.
Well, hopefully I would scroll, I'm not sure. You might just want to have something here like scroll down to find out how. So this is the meditation package. So over here you can see that what comes to your mind? Let's see. I'm not going to Okay, so first of all, I would actually just click on the scene. I won't even read the stuff, but since you told me already, cholesterol, blood pressure. No, I don't even know what cholesterol is. Blood pressure, I think it's something naturally kind of figures. So I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it's what I'm doing, but I understand most of it is when you actually are. So I kind of forgot that by now, but I'm just
So it's important that Shangxiang don't guide him too much. Oh, on this, sort of. Don't you need to say where he is going, but don't paraphrase all the time what he was doing, where he was going and stuff. So because you're prompting him too much, because in the end he needs to actually figure out what's going on. So you're a really good participant at the moment. You're giving him a lot of feedback, but you're a bit too leading. Let him explore. You can still say where he is, but try to avoid, okay, now you're on this, and these are the 3 dots there, and, because it might mean something different to him, and you say, oh, no, this is what it is. These are the 3 notifications. For him, he might say, hey, this is weird. What is this all about? And you are telling him already what he... You have to be more passive. That's the key. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just thinking. Yes, exactly. It's a real life experience, sort of. Okay, we got 5 more minutes.
Stories will really upload the videos will actually upload the most of them. In the Instagram account, they only have pictures and they don't actually have videos. Let me scroll a bit further to see if I use any videos. So really it needs to appeal to all my senses, not just visual. Let me explore what is called feedback. Nowadays, teenagers don't use flex anymore.
Very good point.
All these
Very good point. Very good issue here. It's like, oh, you could say, because you were a teenager, you could say, oh, text, what is text? Who's parents using this?
we use TikTok, we use Facebook, although a bit less nowadays. Snapchat, a little bit of Instagram,
So it's interesting because you discovered a very fundamental thing actually here that they're using this, and now the teenager tells you, what is this? I don't use that. Like that's like, oh, you might have never discovered this if you wouldn't have interviewed him, right? You might have just gone with it and then it rolls out and nobody's using it because they don't even know what it is. And
We have to know because we have been using
I know. I'm so sad. Exactly. They don't know maybe.
Yeah.
Never used it. Cool. So 2 more minutes. So you could slowly wrap it up and maybe note down the issues. So like in 2 more minutes we get together. So you can kind of slowly kind of stop and just like maybe take a minute to kind of, think about like what was the feedback about, what changes suggested, and then because I'm going to do a bit of sharing now, so you can just either of you or both of you basically can look at what feedback was there and maybe pick up one issue and just share it with us. Okay, cool. So you can basically start. Cool, great. So maybe just a couple of seconds or a minute or so, then I will just ask you to share a little bit of the issues you discovered. So you could each just pick out one issue you discovered, just say what it was, what kind of change was suggested. So that's what I'm going to do in a minute. You can just pick one that's very prominent. Okay, guys, I think we can slowly kind of stop because we want to do a bit of feedback. So maybe what you could do is just look at your stuff that you have collected in terms of feedback, pick out one issue, and just in a minute just share it with the group. What was the issue? What was the change suggested? And then every group will do this, and then we talk a little bit about your experiences doing it. Then there's a bit of summary, and that's all. Cool, great, excellent. Okay, guys, guess we can slowly bring the group together again to just kind of have a bit of sharing, which is probably quite helpful. Maybe before we go into the actual issues and the changes suggested, we could just maybe take a couple of minutes to talk about your experiences doing the interviews with a kind of fictional participant, and the website you have probably just looked at for 10 minutes or so. So it's obviously different when Joseph and Shangxiang, they had their own apps, so that was a bit better because they know the stuff a little bit better. But when you develop it, you know it much better, so you know what to look at. But it's probably, yeah. So maybe you could just share a few things you observed while the interview was going on. You just shout out loud. You want to say something? Yes, yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah, okay. So that's something that's hard to do in a workshop because if you have all developed a website, it might be easier to do. Okay. So any other experiences with the procedures? Any difficulties, or was it easy?
You mentioned I was asking questions, I was leaving a binary answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a very good example actually, because I was observing you for a couple of minutes, and you like to ask things like, do you think it's useful? And he's like, oh yeah, it's useful. But that doesn't tell you anything, right? It's like, oh no, it's not useful. And then that might help you because you could follow up, but usually you had this binary kind of things. What do you think of this? Do you like this? Yes or no? But why do you like it? Why do you not like it? So if you do a binary, follow up on it. Yeah. Okay, so any other experiences?
I'm the developer myself.
Yeah, he's a developer. So they had advantages here.
So when the user is using I've become very enthusiastic and start leading people to where they will say what they more, and then so other things you are going to lead it.
Yeah. 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 I know. Yes. So here's maybe a quick hint. So if you do these interviews, it's not ideal if you don't know the website at all. Really, just like 10 minutes. It's really short. But if you're the developer, you know too much, and you're too invested in it. So ideally, a third person who was kind of involved, who knows a bit about the website, would actually do interviews. Could be an RA, could be an intern, or whatever, whoever that is. So that's how we actually ran these things. Those who developed it didn't always do the interviews because you are, as you just said, you are invested. How come you don't get that? Like, what's wrong with you? This is where you are now. I'm super excited. So no, I wouldn't recommend that the developer is interviewing, at least not everybody. Yeah, so otherwise you get very biased kind of responses because you're asking very specific things. Okay, any other feedback, any other comments? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
But then I realized I went a bit off script and I just asked them, well, we're trying to get you to exercise more. But instead of feedback on the app, I just asked them, well, what actually would help you exercise more?
Yeah.
In general, if you could do anything.
Yeah.
And that was actually very helpful because it kind of took me away from specific analytics.
Yeah.
He said, it would be really helpful to hear examples of what people have done. Exactly. And it makes sense. I should actually change what my app is. I should just, instead of saying, like, what's your plan? I should say, here's what someone else did. They went walking afterwards.
Yes.
And now that actually is in the direction of my
yeah. So this is something that we use. Normally what we do is what happens is, I don't know, I'm not familiar with the app, so I can't really comment much, but usually what happens is that when people go through something, it's like, you're just giving me content, but you don't give me an actual practical example of how I should do it, like stories of people who were similar to me, who actually kind of jumped over that issue of not being able to fit physical activity in their lives. And the question that you asked about sort of the big picture question, I think the way you did it was okay, but normally we would do it right at the end. That would be sort of a debriefing question. So, okay, now we have looked at this app. How do you think about being more active? What would actually help you? And then they might say, oh, the app does, it's nice that you did the app, but I don't think it does very much to me because of this and this. So we would kind of ask it at the end, because as you just said, you're going a bit off, sort of, and we really want to still have feedback on the app itself. So, but I think it was all right in your case. Okay, any other thoughts? Maybe what I will do before we share the issues is maybe I would just go through a few things I observed while I went around. What I found very often, we are just 6 people, but this mention of, this is our website and we want to, he said like, it's in development, we kind of want to make it better. I wouldn't really say it that way, because otherwise the participant thinks, oh, this is something that you haven't really thought through, right? You're just kind of, you're kind of in the dark, and participants tend to be at that stage very overly critical, because you are actually asking them to pick out all the things that are wrong. So the way I would usually phrase it is that, we have this website, develop this website, and we just want to see what you think about it, and just feel free to share every feedback. So this leaves them in a sort of very neutral place, and they don't actually know if it's a draft, if it's a fully developed website. So it's kind of, if you say it's kind of a drafty version and you want to make it better, it sounds a bit like, I'm looking at some early stuff, you don't really know what to do here. So it's a bit of a fine line, but you will figure it out when you do a few. So that's one thing I found. A bit of prompting to think out loud, especially the middle group was a bit quiet at some point. You went through the website and mumbled a little bit. You were just observing him, but you could just, okay, what are you thinking now? Oh, why did you go there? And these kind of things. So make him talk a little bit more. The idea is really that the person talks. It's really important. Otherwise, you don't have any data, so that's not helpful. No leading questions. You had the leading question, and you also had the issue of, probably applied to others as well, when he said something and then you interpreted it. So you think it's not useful. So you think it's not so good to have that at all. I think you also had that at some point. So you think that's like not really good at all. But maybe that's not what he meant. He meant, no, why don't you change it? So, don't make so kind of strong conclusions about what people think. What happens quite often, happened also here, talk about yourself and not about other people. I think you said it, or you also said it a bit like, teenagers today, they don't have this and this. Talk about the interviewer need to intervene and say, oh, but I'm actually interested what you think about this, and not what potential other people think. That's very common that people will say, I tell you, other people won't like that, or other people won't understand that. I understand. But what he's actually saying is he doesn't really understand it, but he doesn't like to say it. Right? So that's what people say. I always say, in these moments, I say, okay, what do you think? I'm interested in you today. I don't really care about other people. So that's something you can keep in mind. Yeah, okay. A bit of jargon I had sometimes, like prototype, like you use that word. Well, it depends on the target audience. If it's older adults, you might not want to use the word prototype or beta version, or say, what's a beta? Beta, I use beta blockers. These kind of things are a bit hard for them. I don't think so much. As an interviewer, don't talk too much. I sometimes had a bit of an impression it was more like a conversation than sort of the interviewee going through certain things. I think 2 more things that were brought here. You, as you said already, you had too much experience with the website, and you were like, oh, you are there, And these are the 3 things you can do here. You're basically telling him already what he can do. And oh yeah, okay, but he might have never figured that out. And you're telling him what to do. So, again, you're kind of vested. Too leading sometimes. Okay, cool. Maybe let's have like a 2-3 minutes sharing of the issues you found. Maybe we start from here. So what did you find? Maybe just point out one.
I interviewed India really helpful on the HPV website.
Yes.
And then first of all, there's an issue with the publish. When you go to the HPV website, there's a photo showing a person KPV interface. It's not very welcoming. So hopefully they can take a different photo like doing the person at another angle and so on.
Yep.
And then second, on one page, they say that HPV has a variety of programs to help people with more companies, but we need that they just have like one link of like one photo of the screen saying variety of programs. So it's not like just to have sorry for many icons showing one program rather than one icon for many programs. And the third thing is that the script for live page, which encourages regular health screening has several issues. First of all, data about people above 25, above 30, and then above 55. So it's not clear like what about teenagers really need undergo health screening and so on. And when we actually click on the page for colorectal cancer, it redirects us to the front page. And starting when
I know.
cervical cancer actually affects. They say that cervical cancer affects period age. So it's not clear why they have like one icon or one other for each age group. And the thing that cervical cancer affects everyone, I think much more simple.
Okay. So that was one situation where she got completely lost. She's like, where am I going? So these are really the red flags where like the developer had thought about this kind of cool way of connecting pages and whatever. And then the user's like, oh my God, I got completely lost. So that was happening to you once. And like, she didn't know where she was going. So it is very helpful to find out, okay, can you share a bit? Maybe one issue that you found. Yes.
Yeah, so first of all, we want to comment on the names.
Okay.
We want to know the relevance of because we are finding so he's not happy about it.
Okay, did he suggest anything to change it?
Yeah, he did. Correct.
What did he say?
Both the guy and the girl cannot happy. Finally, only the girl was happy. So I'm wondering if I quit smoking, since I'm a guy, I'll be not happy.
Okay, so these are kind of very simple things in a way. Okay, so. So again, stories here again comes up as a kind of common thing, and you will find this a lot in for a lot of health behaviors, especially that people want to have like anecdotes of people who overcome something or whatever, rather than and this is a lot. It's actually interesting. It's not just people's comments. Also in a lot of theories, quite clear that you actually need to have some real experience of real people, some sort of stories or pictures or videos of people actually overcoming that. It's kind of a modeling behavior sort of thing, rather than long text. Cool. Thanks a lot. Thanks. You want to share something?
So I was interviewing on the website. So I think the idea was that there was actually 2 different functions. The smoke free chat and the free chat. One was targeting cigarettes and one was targeting vaping.
Okay.
The free chat was the two of it.
Oh, okay.
And the smoke free one doesn't link to it, and you would think that when you click the smoke free one, it would clarify itself.
Yeah.
Or if it's trying to,
Yeah.
if you realize that it's only targeting cigarettes, then you should just click here to go to the next one.
Yeah.
but it somehow was organized separately. The FAQ for what the text thing was about too early.
Yeah.
No interest to follow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good point. Sorry, just kind of interrupt you for a sec. It's a very good point of the wordiness of things. This is something that comes up again and again in these interviews, that too much text, too much scrolling going on here. It's honestly, people, especially health behaviors, especially for most people, they're not very health conscious and they don't spend a lot of time on this, and then you have like text and text and text and maybe jargon, and oh my god, it's very hard. So generally what we also recommend is shorter text, having a few more pictures and videos, and a text that is definitely, and it came up a few times, if people read it, it's jargony, it's very hard to understand, it has a lot of words, have a lot of syllabi. Is that the plural form, syllabus? Syllabi. I need to ask a native speaker. Yeah, I don't know. So these kind of things, so that's great. Okay, I will just move on to you. Is that okay? Cool.
So in terms of the healthy living, I think it needs to be focused, because it can be more words for the beverage.
Okay, for beverage, yeah.
Focus on operators because food, so that's a whole ton of information there.
Yeah.
I was there as a parent,
Yeah.
parent, so who's who I don't care what's the problem.
Okay.
So I know what to eat.
Okay, so exactly, if the intention is healthy living, yeah.
Yeah, so, and the other links will try to do it.
Okay. Okay.
There were a couple of wrong things, so
that's also nice. It happens every time. Like, oh, where am I now?
But this one is, you got 3 pictures and 2 of them in the same text.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah. Joseph, you want to say?
Yeah, I think the key thing to me was, I guess I mentioned before that I realized that the app was just asking to make plans or trying to do them, but instead I realized we need to be actually doing the plan, which is taking a suggestion of what we do.
Yeah.
And just one thing I learned when I started in Qualitative, interviewing and presenting to users, I think the best thing to really is to record it.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we record it, I found this app, because if you're recording it, you won't want to see that again.
Yeah.
So I basically get like an app like SoundCloud, you record it, it gets uploaded in copy URL, or you upload it and you do the drive.
Yes.
And otherwise you will never see this again in your life. You forget about them. So I found that helpful because one is like capture, but also I'm a lot more systematic.
Yeah.
So you try and rely on memory, like you make all kinds of things. Whereas
Yes.
if you record it, then I make sure I show the way when it's like, oh, there's get 3 things that came out, but you missed this.
Yes.
You can look at it and critique it. So I found that very helpful.
Cool.
It forces me much more systematic.
Cool. Yeah. Shang Xiang, did you find anything?
Yeah. So for my application,
Mm-hmm.
we try to because right now there is a trend to go minimally. So we try to leave after the site, but then the downside is before the code. We realize that for certain pages, the key important information is either too small or it requires which the participant may miss. Another point is that we work with clinician and clinician like they want to have chance.
Mm-hmm.
That to be in the website. The challenge is participants. We put that because it has to be there.
Yeah.
The challenge is the participant will be.
Yeah.
So then we have to think about, do we really need them to read all these things? We need them to read all these things. Make it less chunky, because when I present the information with one big chunk, he just, I'm not going to read this.
Yes.
He's just going to skip it.
Very common response, wordy things. Oh my god.
And another thing is, we also have an application that empowers the participants to make choices.
Yeah.
And plan for their lifestyle change.
Yes.
So we make them go to page of options, and then
Yes.
before we present them with the final this.
Yeah.
But the issue is participants don't really remember what they choose.
Yeah.
So it will probably be helpful to say we have something on the side to track what they have
Yeah.
chosen. So if they regret afterwards, then they go back and change it. Otherwise, actually initially it shows you want to be a BMF. And then when he reaches the BMF, he says, I don't want, I'm not interested in anything. He just want to select nothing to move over, but
Yeah. Exactly. Cool. So see, it's already some practical things here for actual apps. Okay, I'm just going to take another 10 minutes of your time, or maybe 15. I hope that's fine. Do you have 10, 15 minutes, or do you need to rush out at 11:30? Okay, Ken? Cool. Okay, so basically you have done sort of part of the analysis. So I'm not asking you now about thoughts of analysis because I have already kind of, well, not answers, but some ideas of how to do it. Okay, that's already done. So what we normally do is we combine responses pertaining to each question page or app page in such a way that we would have the page name, whatever the page, healthy living in Singapore or whatever, like the specific page. Then we would have a comment, and this is where the recording comes in, of the participant. Ideally, you would have it verbatim. If not, you could paraphrase it if it's not something where you need to publish it, let's say, right? And it's fine. Participant said, too many words on the slide. Participant didn't understand what this word means. Participant said, why don't we add images here? Or whatever it is. Then you could also kind of at the end collate and see how many people actually brought it up. Because something important probably is to keep in mind that don't make a change that is a bit tricky or might be controversial after one participant. Only when a few bring it up. So we usually do it after 3 to 4. But if it's a typo or if it's something that's like super obvious, like they say, oh, this is too long, nobody's going to read this. And you realize that's probably a bit too long, you can cut it down after the first one. So that's how we do it. Normally we have it in an Excel sheet where we note all this down and we note down what kind of changes were suggested and what we have done. So it's kind of keeping track of the things that you do. So yeah, once you have all this feedback, you change content or functionality. Again, not after the first participants, probably, and probably also in consultation with your team, if it's not something super obvious. And then test again. Especially when you do controversial or more kind of involved changes, test these changes again. Yeah, if you, for example, add pictures and videos to the website, get the next 2 or 3 participants to specifically look at it and see if they respond well to it. If they do, awesome, your change was successful and you can be pretty sure it's going to work out. Yeah. So generally, this is an iterative process. It's not that you interview 15 or 20 people and then you take all the feedback and make all the changes, because then you don't have anybody to check the changes anymore. So normally we do 3 to 5 people, interviews, we listen to all the recordings, make the changes, and then a few days later we ask the next group of participants with the updated website what they think about it, 3 or 4 people. And then you will see after maybe 15 to 18 or so people, feedback either is something you don't want to change because it's very important for your website to have it in, might be disclaimers or whatever, where you can't do anything about, or the feedback is really just opinion on taste stuff. Or I don't like this little man in the corner, but only one participant says it, and So when you feel like the most important changes are done, you can just stop interviewing. It's a lot more subjective, obviously, but I think you will figure it out. You will get a feel for it when you can stop doing it. So as I said, we had 36 interviews. With 3 different websites. Some interviews took like 90 minutes, and we had like 8 people actually involved in this whole process, because we need to listen, we need to list it down, we need to discuss, need to make changes, interview the next person. It was actually a lot of work, but if your app is a bit smaller, you might not need that kind of, it also depends, like if you have the resources, do you have the time to actually do these things, right? Okay, so outcomes of cognitive interview is usually changes to wording to simplify things. Very common, probably the most common thing is that. Changes to order and structure, also very, very common, where people get lost, or they doesn't flow well, or things, the button doesn't go where the participant thinks it goes, or the website is too big or too small, or whatever it is. So this is also quite common that this happens. Changes to quantity of content. My top one. Normally, we would want to cut the content down a lot to really present the key things that we want to get across, rather than all this noise around. That's also very common. Adding and removing features. We have played with like goal setting stuff, or like with setting plans and all these things. And you do the interview and people are like, I'm not going to do that. No, that's not, or they don't get it, or you simplify it, or you just remove a feature. A very common feature that we tend to remove all the time is like social networking stuff, because we notice a lot of people don't really use it. And if it's cluttering your website and you feel like, oh, nobody's going to use it, you just leave it out, really. Technical problems we discover very often, that links don't work, very, very common, and more. You can, there are always color schemes change sometimes and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so what you could also do, and this is after you have done all the quantitative interviews, you could actually have a proper qualitative analysis. So this would go beyond the website development or the app development. If you have people, let's say people like me will say, oh, you know what, you interview 30 people, why don't we ask them about their health behaviors in general after they had exposure to content related to the health behavior. So that's what we did in this paper here, 2018, where we basically had people looking at the diet and the physical activity website, and then we asked them 5 to 10 follow-up questions at the very end. And then we actually used that to write up a publication. And it got published quite nicely, so we need to think about these things. You could also think about like how all the others perceive various web features. Especially a human-computer interaction, you could probably look into how do whatever adults or children perceive certain website features, what feedback was there, and sort of find some general truths about that and publish it. That's possible, actually. It's just a bit more involved. You would probably need somebody who is a bit experienced in qualitative analysis, or you can figure it out yourself if you want to. So pros and cons, I think I would just go through it because we all want to go. So first, you don't need to do much training for the interviewer. You have done it all once. I think if you do it a couple of times, after 5 to 10, maybe 15 times, you kind of know what to look out for. You're pretty safe in just doing it. The interview has only a few jobs during the interview. It's also quite nice. Yeah, it's not hard. We usually do it with research assistants or even interns. It's quite easy for them to do, actually. You don't need to do much. You have, and this is something that I noted before, they're less biased because the interviews are not very direct. If you don't ask, like, how do you feel about this? That's what I was noticing before, right? So quite open, and you get quite, not so much of bias, really. You gather info on real moment perceptions, and this is something that I find the most key thing to this whole cognitive interviewing, because, as I said before, like when you sit on a desk and then there's a new website to you, and after like a couple seconds you have a thought like, oh no, this is, oh my god, all this text, or whatever it is. So doing this is actually pretty much modeling a real life first experience with a website. You get a really brutal feedback on it, like as you would sit at home and just go through a website and think, oh, that's good or rubbish. Yeah, so that's like response that oh my god. And here you get it straight away, and you avoid people dropping out too early from using the website or whatever. So that's the idea of it anyway. So cons, there are a few cons here, obviously. There's high participant burden to unnatural process. It's not common for us to say what we think out loud, especially verbalizing exactly how we think. So you will find a lot of different participants have a different skill set of actually doing that. Some people are very quiet, and some are like talkative. Some paraphrase a lot more. Some people talk about other people, how they would think about this. So it's not easy for participants actually to do that. It's also weird. We don't say what we think so much. Yeah, variant proficiency. Participants may stray away from tasks, so that happens very often with older people. You ask them about a website, and there's like we had a cancer website. Oh my God. Oh, then they talk about the friend or their uncle had cancer, and then they had some therapy, and then they go on and on and on and on and on and on about all sorts of things. So that's quite tough, especially for like older adults. It's very funny. That's why some interviews took 90 minutes or 2 hours. You need to bring them back. So it's a bit difficult to analyze, think about transcripts, because responses can be quite messy. As I just said, you look at something, then suddenly you come up with a story. So organizing it in a kind of tabular form works quite well. But again, people might stray away. So it's not too easy, but I think it's quite doable. But the qualitative analysis, especially if you have follow-up questions, is usually quite doable, I think. And that's what you experienced just now. The verbal probing can actually be a bit leading. And what it also does, because you're asking a participant to look through a website, that participants have this tendency to think a lot more about the content and the features on the website than they would normally do in real life. Yeah, normally it's like, all right, yeah, okay, nice, okay, I get it, or whatever. But you're forcing them to think about something, and this might lead participants to try to find stuff that's not nice, although they wouldn't really care about it normally. So they could overthink. That's a kind of a danger of this, right? Okay, cool. A discussion I will leave out. So the PowerPoint is on the website. The handout I gave you, but it's also on the website, and the interview guide is also printed with you, but also on the website, so you can access that. Thank you, La. That's all. We're done. Cool. Can go home, or maybe go to office. So this is my Twitter and the project Twitter. My email is somewhere. I guess you will find my email. If not, I can write it if you're interested. That's it. Thanks a lot. What's the time now? Oh, perfect. 8 minutes late. Thanks.